Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht.
Hello and welcome to the Gegenpressing, the German football podcast for the Football Grad Network. I'm your host today, Matthew Marshall, hosting in the hot seat with Bryce, still enjoying the married life and Hal off doing some Hal things. Plenty to talk about from match day 7. Let's have a quick run through the results. On Friday night, we saw Werder Bremen beat Wolfsburg 2-0. Hanover defeated Stuttgart 3-1. Borussia Dortmund, in an exciting match, defeated Augsburg 4-3. Goalless draw between Mainz and Hertha. Fortuna Düsseldorf lost 2-0 at home against Schalke. Bayern Munich, the crisis is full on now with a 3-0 home defeat against Borussia Mönchengladbach. And on Sunday, we saw Freiburg and Bayer Leverkusen play out a goalless draw. Hoffenheim won at home against Eintracht Frankfurt, who came to town and won 2-1 there. And RB Leipzig, massive 6-0 victory here at home against Nürnberg. Whew, all right, let's get to it. I'm joined, as usual, by Manu Veth. Manu, how's your Oktoberfest tour going?
Yeah,
that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is a mouthful. It has been a mouthful too, a mouthful of beer. No, it's been going really good. Been enjoying being back home and watching a whole lot of games, and I'm really excited to chat about them all.
Okay, yeah, you've been going to see Bayern Munich while all this crisis has been going. We're not going to say you've cursed them. There's plenty of other people out there.
That's Archie's fault. We'll get to that
later. We'll leave the cursing to some other people. And Chris Williams is also here. Chris, how have you been? What's happening?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, mate. Just been watching the football. Not as lucky as you guys to be over in Germany. My time is coming in 2 weeks now, end of this international break. It's 3 weeks, isn't it? Dortmund play away at Stuttgart first. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back over to Germany as soon as the international break's finished.
Fantastic stuff. Well, let's start with a Friday night fixture then, which saw Werder Bremen continue their impressive start to the season with a 2-0 victory against Wolfsburg. Chris, you did the match thoughts on this for fußballstat.com. How did you see the match?
Oh, well, it seems so long ago now, that game. But yeah, I thought Werder Bremen were excellent, really. I'm a little concerned for Wolfsburg. I think they started the season very, very well, didn't they? And I think, we were only speaking a couple of weeks ago how things may have just turned a corner for them. Well, I headline them as a familiar slump. I was really impressed. I don't know where you guys obviously saw this match as well, but Davy Klaassen now looks someone to be very settled at his club. Obviously, he was excellent whilst he was at Ajax. Didn't really settle at Everton, fell out with Ronald Koeman early on, I believe, and then Allardyce after it. So, yeah, it's nice to see him playing really good football. And then I think the headline for the whole game was Claudio Pizarro. I think I've mentioned before that I'm very disappointed in myself that with the same age and yet he can still play top level football, and I could probably just about, I can't even catch a train if I run for it, can we, Manu? We got stuck in Wolfsburg, so there's probably enough said about that. But for the entire game, I thought Bremen were excellent, and maybe they should have won by a little bit more. Obviously, the 2 goals were quite spread out midway through, towards the back end of the second half and right by the end of, the first half, right by the end of the second half. But I'm really impressed by what I've seen so far at Werder Bremen now. I'm thinking that maybe they could potentially go all the way to Europe next season.
Yeah, it was impressive stuff from Kofeld so far in charge. Manu, they are doing very well under him at home. How did you see the game, and what's your thoughts on Werder Bremen?
I'm glad that they're doing so well, because I thought that last year when they went into the season with Nuri, as a coach that I wasn't very convinced with, and Werder Bremen were a very big club in the 90s and 2000, Matt, and they were a team that regularly challenged Bayern for the title and won the title in, I think it was 2004 the last time they've won it. So this is a team that has a big history and tradition, and Claudio Pizarro has been a big part of this, because I mean he's been around since 1999. Can you believe it? In the Bundesliga, it's been almost 20 years. But yeah, it's interesting how they, under Kofeld last year, you could see signs of it, that the club would stabilize, and then they went and bought a very big key piece in Davy Klaassen. Werder always had a history of having number 10s, players that could dictate the pace, the speed of the game plan, and they didn't have that. Remember before, historically there's players like Miko, Andy Herzog, Mesut Özil's played a big part there, Diego, for those who remember, and for about 5-6 years they didn't really have a real number 10, and I think historically that's always been something very important for Bremen. And I mean, Chris, you mentioned Davy Klaassen already. They put that player in, and he's been such a big difference maker for him. And then Claudio Pizarro, yeah, you mentioned we're running for the train. To be fair, you were on live radio while we were running for the train. But
yeah, and I didn't want to be panting.
So, okay, aside, but he said in an interview that he feels fitter than ever before. I mean, that's absolutely remarkable, because we thought, okay, he's going to come in there for maybe 30 minutes here and there, but he's playing a lot more, and he had 2 assists in this game. It's just incredible stuff.
Yeah, Werder Bremen are really doing well. I saw this game, and I thought Wolfsburg without Camacho, we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, might struggle, and Labadia brought in Tisserand here. But yeah, for sure, Werder Bremen just losing that one game at Stuttgart a little while ago where they had a man sent off, but currently in 4th position, and we'll have to see how they do after the international break. Let's move on to Borussia Dortmund. Now they kept their unbeaten record under Lucien Favre alive with a tremendous 4-3 win against Augsburg to keep top spot in the league. They're 3 points clear of 4 teams, all on 14 points. Chris, you watched this one. How did you see this one? Tremendous game.
Yeah, now this was a game of football. Not so much you tweeted this. This is a fantastic game of football, unless you're a fan of defending. If you're a fan of defending, do not watch this game, because there are 7 instances on which you will cry. And I'm going to be fair on that, because the tackle that brings the free kick for the winner is a horrendous tackle to make that far out from goal. So take out the terrible defending from both sides, and we probably wouldn't have had the same game. But let's look at what Dortmund have done the last couple of weeks. Obviously, they came back against Leverkusen. Once again, that was a game where, I mean, they pretty much looked dead and buried by half-time. It was a different story against Augsburg. They looked very, very good early on, but were just unable to score, which is quite unlike a Lucien Favre side and more of an old-style Dortmund. But they bared with it. Even when they went behind, they were very, very patient. I think this is a standout feature of the way Favre plays football. They won't be rushed into making a shot. They like to work the ball, now be that left to right, front to back, whatever, and they will wait for that opportune moment. I do worry a little bit defensively though, and Lucien Favre said that in his post-match comments. He said he's still got a lot of work to do defensively, and I will agree with that. But you get that feeling at the moment that if you score 2, Dortmund will score 3. If you score 3, Dortmund will score 4. So I think that is a lot to be taken into account if you're a Dortmund fan. I think we've got to talk about Jadon Sancho, because he's just a revelation at the moment. You could hear the audible difference when he was on the ball. It's almost as if most people that are stood up everyone stood up on the yellow wall, but on the sides of the ground, it's almost when he gets the ball, they almost seem to come off their seat by an inch, because they're expecting and they're waiting to see what he can do with that. And he is exceptionally skillful. And give Augsburg their credit, they doubled up on him midway through the first half, and that sort of stifled him a bit. And the only time when they didn't is after Paco Alcácer came on, and then the two of them had plenty of fun. But I mean, Sancho was impressive. There's one man that's impressed me even more, and that's the signing from Barcelona. I didn't think he would have this sort of impact that he's had. Maybe he should have started this game. We can probably discuss that in great length. But Dortmund have a striker at the moment, and that's something that they haven't really had since Aubameyang left, and also for the last few months of Aubameyang's tenure. He wasn't really firing on all cylinders. So I think for the first time in 8-9 months, Dortmund have a striker, and I think this is crucial for the way they're playing at the moment.
Dortmund are looking. Sorry, Manu, I was just going to say you were there on Wednesday. Yeah. How are Dortmund looking to you?
Yeah, I mean, I can only echo a lot of the things that Chris has said. I asked Lucien Favre a question about Jadon Sancho, and Lucien Favre is one of the most fascinating characters in world football. I mean, this is a man who lives and breathes football, and understands the game and articulates the game in a way that is very unusual in German football, or in general in football. And I asked him a very simple question about Jadon Sancho, and he went off in about a 10-minute monologue at the press conference about how Jadon Sancho has to learn a lot. And then he went on and on and on about all the other young players, and he basically detailed that all these young players who are still learning how to play the game, that Dortmund are still trying to figure out how to put in all the right pieces together, how they're still, I mean, he's very unhappy for that in the Monaco game, for example, they had to bring in players off the bench. I mean, on one hand, you can say that's a strength, that you can bring in players off the bench. It was the same against Augsburg, right? You can bring in players on the bench and basically decide the games like that. Power of the bench is a big thing. They have a very deep squad, but at the same time, he's unhappy that he has to kind of do that. He would like to see things to go perfect. So it's really interesting to chat to him about it and to listen to him, because he's always finishing every sentence when it comes to the way Dortmund have played. And this was the same with this game, right? Chris, post-match, he said, we need time. Please give us time. This is not a finished product. I mean, it's so hard to look at Dortmund, a project that's still not finished because they're first in the league, without giving away too much. And then listen to Favre, who was absolutely ecstatic, and you don't often see him ecstatic after games. But then he has to almost kind of slow himself down and say, look, this is not a finished product, and we need time. And it's kind of, I think that's probably the most difficult thing that Dortmund face at the moment, because they seem almost unbeatable in a way, right? Because they're just going to bring on another piece of the bench, and they, as Chris said, if someone scores 2 against them, they will just score 3. But at the same time, it's really hard to explain to a fan base, a very expecting fan base, and everyone in Germany, look, we're in the middle of a project. This is the really early stages. We're not even anywhere near to where we want to be, which is probably pretty scary for the rest of the league. But I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, I think we can maybe put down the amount of goals they're conceding on such a young defense. And I think we need to keep this in perspective, just how young, the likes of Akanji, Diallo, and now Hakimi and also Zagadou. It's incredible how young these guys are, but they're the hottest ticket in town right now, surely, Chris. How far can Dortmund go? Can they win the league? The question everyone's asking, but can they sustain it for the entirety of the season?
Well, that's a $64,000 question, isn't it? And Manu's quite right. This is still a working project. So, this is still something that has got the potential to go a little bit awry for a couple of weeks while they're still working on things. But at the moment, the front end of the side is definitely firing all cylinders. And as you quite rightly said, there's a young back line. Berkey made the odd mistake over the weekend. I think we can afford players who are young, and Berkey himself, if he's got a defence in front of him that are still learning, that may put him on edge as a goalkeeper and may make him make the odd mistake. I'm going to hold off saying if they can win the league or not, because I think I probably thought they could win the league last season when Bayern got off to a terrible start under Ancelotti, and then they just rang Jupp Heynckes, who came in and the problems were sorted out straight away. I don't quite think that telephone line is connected anymore, so we'll just hold off a little bit. But you've got to look at the way Dortmund are playing football at the moment. Then yes, they should be there or thereabouts come the end of the season. I don't think it's good enough for Dortmund to finish second, 10, 15 points behind Bayern, or even third or fourth, and say, okay, we got into Champions League. They need to be knocking on the door of the Bundesliga title, and it's so far so good. But I wouldn't be surprised if they had a little slip in January, February, maybe even with a run-in, a little slip, because this is a project. Excuse me. This is a project, and that project could take 2 seasons. It could take 3 seasons to see fruition. So when it all goes really well in the first 6, 7 opening games, that's when I think people's ideas and excitement can run away with themselves, and they'll just get brought back down to earth with a bang when eventually they do get beat, or eventually they get beat twice on the run or something. So I would urge caution. And on the same token, if Dortmund do lose two games back to back, let's not try and avoid, hopefully we won't see that mass. They've lost 2 on the game, that's it, they're never going to win a title. It's all going wrong under Favre sort of thing. But I think there's quite a lot of people scarred in Dortmund from the likes of Bosch and Stoger, that if things do go bad, there may be a tendency to panic, which I don't think anyone should do under Lucien Favre.
Chris, I'm happy you picked out Roman Bürki, because you know that I've been a big critic of his, and I saw him play against Monaco, and I thought they had bought a new keeper, because he still makes mistakes, but he's a lot better in his distribution, and he's a lot better. Maybe it is because of the young players around him, but I thought it was a lot better in terms when he came out of his box and actually played the ball out of the back. It was a lot better as a setup, and he seemed a lot more confidence doing it. Of course, that more offensive style of goalkeeping will lead to mistakes. We see it with Manuel Neuer, right, at times. But I actually thought it's almost like they bought a new keeper. I thought he's been very good in this opening stage of the season.
Yeah, he has. He's played very, very well. And I think what we have to be careful of is when a goalkeeper makes a mistake, and we've said this before, there's nothing behind them to bail them out. If your striker misses, he's got 10 players behind him to bail him out before the opposition go and score. But Bürki did make a mistake. I think was it for the equalising goal, the third goal for Augsburg, where he saves it and it does go underneath him. But if you compare him to Andreas Luther, who started for Augsburg, who is quite an old school goalkeeper and doesn't like the ball at his feet and just boots it out either side, I think that's when you may have a bit of a problem. But Bürki looks quite comfortable. He looks more assured. He looks more confident. But I think if he does make a mistake, it may be because he's got some youngsters to look after in front of him. I mean, he did make a couple of really good saves. And maybe he just needed that. Maybe he just needs that ability to step up. He hasn't got older players in front of him now, or he hasn't got that back four that he was used to. So the pressure isn't on him, and maybe he's thriving under that lack of pressure. But certainly he definitely is a change keeper, but he just has it in him to make the odd mistake. Luckily, Dortmund won this game 4-3, because I think we would have been talking about that. Was it 87th minute equaliser from Gregoric? That really Bürki should be stopping and saving.
Okay, well, we'll have to see what happens with Borussia Dortmund, but at the moment, it's looking very nice. The only remaining undefeated team in the Bundesliga, 3 points clear, and a very healthy for and against. Okay, let's quickly touch on Marco Reus. Manu, he's been taken out of the German national team with a preemptive break to rest his knee. We've got Mark Uth coming into the side. We're not going to give a huge amount of time on the German national team as they play a couple of games in the UEFA Nations League. You want to quickly talk on Reus and the squad?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of BVB fan tweets that, Reus is such a key player for them. I think he's the most important player in the squad. There's been a lot of lauded for Sancho, but Reus has been absolutely amazing. I mean, in the game against Monaco, he what he did in the second half was incredible stuff. You only really recognize it when you see him play live. So he's very, very important for the side. But people forget that he tore his ACL in the cup final. I guess it's now almost 18 months ago. And it's a serious injury. I had this injury myself. It's an injury that takes a long time to completely heal, and it's an injury that stays with you for life, right? So he came back from his ACL injury and basically played every single game ever since. I remember when he came back last year, he hasn't sat out a single game, and I think his doctors basically told him, this might be a good time for you to take a couple weeks off and do some work on your knee, because once you had an ACL injury like that, it's basically something that you have to work on for the rest of your life. You have to basically take care of it because it's not the original joint anymore, right? So I think what they've basically said to him, and this is what the message basically, the B4B message, the official Twitter account said, look, he's going to stay at home and do 2 weeks of work on that knee, take some rest, do some stabilization work, because these are the kind of things that you have to basically do from now till as long as you do any kind of sporting activity. So I don't think anyone really needs to worry, and I think this is probably the best time for him to take a breather, because Germany are going to play 2 UEFA Nations League games that, if you really think about, are not that important. And both Germany and Dortmund need Marco Reus healthy at the moment.
Yeah, that's for sure. He's definitely so integral to everything that Borussia Dortmund do. Okay, let's move on to another important fixture here. The Topspiel as Bayern Munich lost 3-0 at home against Borussia Mönchengladbach. Unbelievable result. Manu, you were there, and this follows their 1-1 draw against Augsburg. Of course, that 2-0 loss in Berlin against Hertha, and the 1-1 draw against Ajax in the Champions League. What's going wrong here with the mighty FC Bayern?
Yeah, what's going wrong? That's a very good question, Matt. I think this is something that I've said this in the post-game Ajax video that I put on Twitter. I feel like I've watched this very same game a couple months ago when I was at the World Cup in Russia and I watched Germany play against South Korea. I felt like it was almost a copy. The Bayern started very well and then had, of course, the goal. And then when Ajax equalized, it was almost like a repetitive motion. Pass, play the ball forward, try to stretch Ajax's defense, and it was very predictable. It was the sort of thing that Bayern have done for now 6 years, but in some ways, the predictability mattered this time, because in the last 6 years, they were faster, they were stronger, they were more physical than everyone else in the league, right? They had the better players, they had depth off the bench, and so everyone knew what they were going to do, but you couldn't stop it. I mean, Arjen Robben is a good example. Arjen Robben is defined by one move that he has done over and over and over again, but you couldn't stop it. Ajax stopped him several times. And then I watched that very same game against Gladbach. I mean, Bayern had 72% ball possession in this match. And it was this repetitive passing. They had chances, but it wasn't really big chances. And Gladbach scored on 3 shots on goal. I mean, that's a remarkable statistic. But Gladbach seemed more dangerous going forward, because when they won the ball, it was click, 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 boom, every time. It was a quick forward, straightforward play, and I feel almost, and I said this, remember, Chris, we had this conversation after Bayern was defeated at the DFB Pokal final against Eintracht Frankfurt. I'm like, this is the way that teams can beat Bayern. Because Frankfurt did the very same thing to Bayern in the final. And I said, this game might potentially change the way German football is going forward, because all of a sudden there's a vulnerability there. And I think that vulnerability is just because Bayern, in a way, and I mean, we might be completely proven wrong in a couple of weeks when they come back, but I think at the moment they just lack ideas and they lack the tempo and the strength to really break down oppositions. So it's almost the Germany-Spain phenomena. That's what I called it in the video, and I think that's really the very core. It's a squad that is just kind of running out of ideas a little bit.
I think.
Flying. What have you made of their slump?
You mean me, Matt? The slump?
Sorry, no, I was just saying to Chris, I mean, they haven't scored in 2 games now, and it's been a remarkable turn considering they were winning every game with ease. What's going on with the slump in your opinion?
Oh, well, I think maybe Manu's right, and they have been. I don't mean Kovac has been worked out. I mean maybe the way to play against Bayern has been worked out. Because if you look at the players they've got, really by rights they should be winning. And now, is that down to the coach? Well, maybe a little bit. Jupp Heynckes is a different animal, but we've seen most of these players took a downturn under Ancelotti, and they came in and got the lift that they needed, and now maybe they're not playing as well as they could have done. But just look at who they had in that team. Süle, Hummels at the back. That's a good defensive partnership. The midfield, I don't think Leon Goretzka has settled particularly well. And why is there a bit of a slump? Well, I think Robert Lewandowski up front is looking like a striker out of form. I think it might just be bad luck for Bayern that at one time they've got a number of players who are playing maybe below what they're used to playing, and they're getting a little bit older, and everything must come to an end. Every good thing must come to an end. Bayern have won the last 6 league titles back to back. They can't go on forever. They can't win 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. At some point, football will change. Football goes in cycles, and Bayern have been the top of the tree for a very long cycle. And maybe that cycle is changing now, and it's time for somebody else to take the mantra and maybe have their own cycle, or a couple of other clubs fight that cycle out. And Bayern might just have to be one of those other clubs now that fights for the title instead of just walking it for the past few seasons. They had an exceptional time under Heynckes and then Guardiola, and then it went off just a little bit, really, if we're going to be honest about Bayern. And maybe it's just time now for them to just accept what comes to most other clubs in the world, is that occasionally you're going to be poor for a couple of seasons, which is going to be very interesting. But I'll urge it again, we're not even at match day 10 yet. So if Bayern are 5th, or maybe they're 6th or even 7th, let's see where they are come May before we go, are they in a full-on slump?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Chris, you're quite right. It is early, but it feels similar to what we saw last year, but in a way worse, because who are they going to bring in to fix this, right? And also, I think they made a couple mistakes on the transfer market. They have a very thin squad. They only have 23 players in their squad. And I think selling someone like Arturo Vidal, for example, was a mistake. A real character player. The players that they have all in right now, they're all very much too nice, and are very much also involved with their own businesses. Mats Hummels is doing his own thing. James Rodriguez is kind of unhappy. Boateng and Hummels are not really talking. There's been talk in Munich about Kovac not doing enough the training with the squad. The training sessions are too soft. I mean, we've heard that before, haven't we? And then I look at the average squad age, which is 27.3, and that means they're the oldest team by far in this league. I mean, they are almost a year older on average than the second oldest team, which is Schalke, with an average age of 26.4. Those things are interesting. And I mean, we've talked about Bayern potentially making some big transfers next summer, right? Because they will have to replace Robben and Ribéry, and I think we're very much at that point now. I mean, I watched Robben and Ribéry, and clubs have found it very easy now to shut those two down. And I think those are some interesting pointers. And you look at Kovac at the press conferences, and he said that we're helpless. At the moment, we're not helpless, but we're helpless, and and this is the reality. This is an actual quote, and I think that's fascinating. And he's a very young coach, and he's dealing with a very different situation at the moment. And yes, I 100% agree with you. I mean, the thing could be completely different 2 weeks from now. They could go and face Wolfsburg and absolutely destroy them, right? And we'll be all saying, "Oh, look, there they are again." But there's a bit of a different feel at the moment.
Yeah, it's certainly been incredible. I think their fixtures are quite helpful to them after the break, despite having to play 4 games on the road. They've got some pretty easy fixtures. You think they will walk through most of them to get them ready for the big game against Borussia Dortmund on the 10th of November. But yeah, currently 6th, but still early days, and only a few points off Dortmund. Yeah.
But reverse, if you all talking, these are easy fixtures. imagine them dropping more points than any of those. Right? Then, we've seen the picture today that Kovac and Rummenigge to Oktoberfest and roasting each other, and it seems so staged. So, and I know that Kovac was Rummenigge's candidate. Hoeneß wanted someone else, right? And those are mechanisms that are going on behind. Hoeneß said midweek after the Champions League game, if things go wrong, it's the coach's head on the line. That's an actual quote. So you're right. It's an easy run-in, but can you just imagine they drop another 2 points or 3?
I personally cannot see them dropping points away from home at Wolfsburg, the way Wolfsburg are playing at the moment. And then where are they next? At Mainz, who have played okay. But again, that's a team really that Bayern should be steamrolling. And then the last one before they play Dortmund is at home against Freiburg. And that's, I'm on Matt's side on this. I think they couldn't have asked for 3 better fixtures before the game against Dortmund, which obviously is away. So that'll add a little bit of extra spice to it for them. I can quite happily see them picking up 9 points out of 9 there. No dramas. And now maybe when we chat at the end of match day 10, I might be able to, eat a bit of humble pie, but I can't see them doing anything by picking up 9 points there. I think this is where they will close the gap that's opening up around them, as they'll get a nice set of fixtures like this. They'll take charge of those nice set of fixtures, and then they'll build a bit of a run. And then we'll be going, who's going to challenge Bayern again for the title?
Well, they will have to, otherwise, I agree with both of you. They on paper, they will have to win those 3 games. I'm just saying, if they don't, well, then it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, it's certainly setting it up nicely for that match in Dortmund, as I say, in early November. What about Gladbach? We have to give them some love here. They're currently 3rd in the table, playing some pretty nice football under Dieter Hecking. Manu, you saw them in Munich. How impressed were you firsthand?
Really impressed. Really impressed. And I don't think we have to give them really credit, because Dieter Hecking looked at this Bayern side, he dissected them, and he said, okay, these are the weaknesses, this is how we're going to hit them. And I thought it was really fantastic how that every time that they won the ball, you had the feeling something will happen, because they were just able to really quickly play the ball forward. And the fact that Hecking played Stindl in the center as a center forward and moved Alassane Player out to the left really seemed to cause havoc in Bayern's backline, because it allowed Stindl was very good at holding the ball, and it almost allowed Player to play around him, right? And I thought that seemed to be something that Bayern just couldn't deal with. So that was a very good tactical masterstroke, but they were really good defensively as well. They made no mistakes, and just that quick transition game, it was just speed. There was so much speed in that side. I was very impressed by Gladbach, and I think they deserve all the credit for the way they played and for the way Dieter Hecking put out this match plan and said, these are the ways that we can hit Bayern, and they executed them perfectly. They made no mistakes, and they scored on their 3 chances. They had 100% scoring rate on the 3 shots on goals. That's how you beat Bayern in Munich, and they did it.
Yeah, they're certainly a very talented squad, and Player has made them even stronger. Neuhaus coming back also. We've got Jonas Hoffmann in very consistent form. Nico Elvedi now has moved into central defence, as we suggested, and Lang is back in right back. So if they can keep up some form, we all know they've got the talent in the squad to get back into Europe, and it's just a matter of putting it together on a consistent basis. But no reason why they can't get up and stay around that top 4 position. Let's move on to another one of the fixtures on Saturday. Hannover got a very important victory here, 3-1 home victory against Stuttgart. Amazing. Bobby Wood's back, and 2 goals, basically identical goals, headers. Unbelievable stuff. Man of the match performance. Manu, this was a massive 3 points for Hannover, and if you want to get into what happened, the repercussions for Stuttgart here, please go ahead.
Oh, I think this is more of a topic for you, Matt, because we've been discussing Korkut for quite some time off the pod.
Well, who saw this coming? I don't know. But...
No, you did, but that's okay. Good for you. You got it. I thought he would maybe last till February. That seems to be prime Stuttgart firing the head coach time. I do want to say, though, that Stuttgart fire the head coach at least once a year. Come what may, Stuttgart will fire the head coach. If you are a Stuttgart coach, you are a dead man walking. Happened to Hannes Wolf, who was a very popular man last year. Remember him, Chris? One of the next up-and-coming head coaches in German football.
Yeah.
Yeah, they fired him. Get out. That's Stuttgart for you. So it's okay, Typhoon. It happened to a long list of coaches, names like Trapattoni, Sommer, Armin Veth, Ralf Rangnick, they all got the job in Stuttgart. It happens to every single one of them. So, yeah, Typhoon Korkut is gone. Matt, I think rightfully so, right? Because they are last in the table. They lost to the one team that, I saw Hannover in Frankfurt, and I think they're pretty much the worst team in the league that I've seen so far this season, and that includes Nürnberg. They are absolutely dreadful, and so good for Bobby Wood. I know we have a lot of American listeners. They'd be happy that he scored a couple, but if you are Stuttgart and you have made massive investments over the last 2 seasons to become a top 6 team again, to lose against them is horrendous. And so I think you should be chatting about Korkut because you saw this coming.
Well, I will if you want. I don't know. I don't want to spend too long on it, to be honest. I don't really take any joy on anyone losing their job, but this is the business that we're in. Chris, I'll talk about it. Chris, can I just ask you and how surprised you are by the timing of this news?
Well, the timing is a little bit of a shock to me because we're not that far into the season. Although maybe Stuttgart saw what happened to Cologne last season. Maybe that was a bit of a maybe that was weighing on their mind why they made a decision so quickly. I can only assume they've got someone lined up pretty quickly to come in. There's a 2-week break. It's obviously been done with that reason. I don't think if there would have been no international break, I'm pretty sure he may have kept hold of his job for maybe until the next one. But I saw them play last season at Cologne, and they were very, very good. And remember, Manu, we chatted after that game and said maybe he turned around the problems he had when he was at Leverkusen. He sorted himself back into a coach who knows how to get the best out of players and knows how to turn teams around, and knows how to turn scorelines around. That particular game, they came from behind to win. I think it was twice. But this season, I've just seen the Korkut who was at Leverkusen and was particularly poor. So I'm not surprised that he's gone. I'm a little bit surprised that it's come so soon. But then with the break in the way it is, we've now got a 2-week break. I'm not really that surprised that it's the best time to do it. You want to get rid of a manager, do it now because you've got 2 weeks to get someone in, especially if you've been sounding them out in the background.
I think the Köln example is a good one, Chris, because we all seen what happened with Köln hanging on to a coach who's done very well, right? And Korkut last year did very well for Stuttgart. So the hero bonus is not maybe a good thing to hang on to the hero bonus for too long, right? Maybe it's best to, if you know things are not going the right way, make the cut now. And the name Hasenhüttl has been mentioned a few times on this pod. He's the first name that came up when Stuttgart fired the head coach. I think there's a few clubs sounding out Hasenhüttl at the moment, but no surprise that he is the main candidate coming in to replace Korkut.
Yeah, you'd have to think that they've got someone lined up, and that's why they've made the move at this time. But we were chatting about this just yesterday, and it was really difficult to see where Stuttgart's next win was going to come from. And to be honest, I couldn't see it coming until next year. So that's just not very good.
That's harsh, but I know where you're coming from. Yeah.
well, okay. Home is against Dortmund, away against Hoffenheim, home against Frankfurt. Not going to win any of them on this form. But then they're looking at a really, really important game away at Nürnberg, and this is kind of a similar situation to the game they lost here against Hanover. And obviously they can't see any improvement here. But without repeating myself from a couple of weeks ago, what he did last year was based on a very basic 4-4-2, which worked well enough. And it just hasn't worked at the beginning of this season. He's tried a few different things here. I'm not sure, with all respect to Holger Badstuber, he's had a good career, but the injuries have just taken their toll. And we saw against Mainz that I just don't think he can this level anymore. But another thing he's done here is that, the club spent 9 million on Pablo Maffio, young 21-year-old right back from Manchester City. Okay, he didn't have a great debut, but look at Hamza Mendil. I think he sort of, what's happened with Maffio and Korkut going to Andreas Beck, who's a good player, but he's 31. Yeah. You just spent 9 million on a 21-year-old. You're giving him 1.5 games, 2 games, and now he's gone. So that's not really good from a club point of view if you're investing, 9 million in a player for your club to give up on him after a couple of games. But there's a lot involved here, but basically he just doesn't have enough tactical nous and ability. I'm sure he'll get another job somewhere, maybe second division, but yeah, not surprised here at all. And a good win for Hanover. Gets them a little bit of breathing space, but still in the relegation playoff position. Okay, let's talk about Hertha just quickly. They went to Mainz, and not the first team or the last that will draw in a goalless draw at Mainz, I would have thought. But Chris, Hertha, we've talked about them quite a bit. You just want to surmise their situation at the moment?
Well, yeah, it's going to be disappointing from them because they've come off the back of a wonderful victory against Bayern, and you would have hoped that would have been some sort of springboard for them. And they have been playing a better style of football, but maybe it's just a bad day at the office for them. But you would be expecting them to go and beat Mainz in the form that they're in at the moment. And it's unfortunate for them because that 0-0 draw has dropped them out of the top 4 at the moment. And I don't think they'll finish top 4, but they need to be keeping as tight a hold on that top 4 as they can. And I just worry for Hertha Berlin because the past has shown that if they get into a little bit of a rut, which starts with a 0-0, if they get beat the next game, I will quite fear for them a bit because I think they'll go on a tumble till we get there to the Christmas time and they go on a winter pause. But yeah, I'm disappointed for them that they drew this game because going and beating Bayern in the way they did and playing the type of football they did, I would have expected them to steamroller Mainz and make a stake for that top 4.
Okay, yeah, Mainz is going to be a really tough place for a lot of teams to get points. It might not be really pretty, but Sandro Schwarz is still trying to figure things out, especially in these sort of wide attacking positions. Tried so many different players out there, and it's been a good start for Hertha. I think Paul Dardai will be pretty happy. Okay, there's one more fixture on Saturday. I was up there in Dusseldorf in a stadium we might quickly touch on. They lost the game 2-0 against Schalke, but Manu, you've been there. It's quite an interesting exterior to this stadium. I don't want to be disrespectful, so could you surmise it in a respectful way?
It looks like it's built at IKEA.
Yeah, there's the obvious comparison to make, isn't it? It's quite a bizarre structure, isn't it? Like
it looks like a container. Did you find the entrance okay? Because it took me about half an hour.
Yeah, I had to go around to the car park at the back, but yeah. It looks like the car parks at the airport, doesn't it? Basically,
yeah, a little bit. It's an odd one. Yeah, it's pretty. It's a good atmosphere inside. The Fortuna fans are quite good, but yeah, it's an odd looking facility.
Yeah, inside it's very nice, and the Schalke supporters just brought a massive amount of people there. They made so much noise, especially after they went 2-0 up. Incredible atmosphere. And that's the great thing about so many of these matches around this part of Germany. It's just that the away supporters don't have to travel very far, and they can bring a whole lot of them and certainly make a lot of noise. But Schalke, they've won 3 in a row now, Manu, without conceding a goal, 2 in the Bundesliga and that late win in the Champions League in Moscow. How much do we make of this 3 wins in a row to get them just out of the relegation zone?
Well, it's crisis averted right before the national team break, I think. I watched the game, the Schalke Lokomotiv game at the screens in the Signal Iduna Park or Westfalenstadion, Chris. They actually had it on, believe it or not. I know you had trouble in Gelsenkirchen watching a Dortmund game once, so yeah, they actually did show the blue side of the Ruhrpott over in Dortmund. I thought, 3 points, exactly what I said last week. It will be a tight affair against Loco. They got the 3 points, not all that matters. And I think that's really what Schalke need to do right now. They just need to haggle themselves from 3 points to 3 points and get themselves out of the hole.
Yeah, it wasn't very pretty, but Weston McKennie's in sensational form. He's really on the way up. And Nabil Bentaleb, I touched on him in my piece after the game. Every time I see Schalke, he's easily one of their best players. Hugely important player, and really has a high ceiling if he can, get a consistent run of games under his belt. Okay, let's move over to Sunday. And a lot of these teams were involved in midweek fixtures. I'm not sure if we want to talk about the game too much. The first one on Sunday, which was Freiburg 0 against Bayer Leverkusen 0. Really lack of intent from the visitors, I thought. Chris, do you just want to give your thoughts? Did you see any of this game? And what's your thoughts on Bayer Leverkusen? We should mention they did have a good win in the Europa League midweek.
Yeah, and that's probably where they need to focus their attention on at the moment if they're looking for good things, because I had the feeling that this particular performance was probably still related to the fact that they threw away, which was something that looked like an unassailable lead last weekend in the manner they threw it away. And I don't quite think they're a side that are settled yet. I think had they beaten Dortmund last week, I don't think we'll be looking at a 0-0 away at Freiburg at the moment. I think they're a team that's low on confidence, and probably if someone was waiting for an international break, a little like I feel Bayern will benefit from this 2-week break. I think Bayer Leverkusen may take this opportunity to just, disconnect from the game, recharge their batteries and go back in, because, where are they now? 14th. I think it's a disappointing result for them, especially after getting beat at home last week. So, yeah, I think if they want to get back to it, they just need to look at how they performed in Europe midweek, how they can bring that sort of form into the Bundesliga, and how they can get themselves back at the table. Because by rights with this squad, and I know Manu tongue-in-cheek said he expected them to be fighting for the title, but they should be, at the minute, they should be round about where Werder Bremen or Hertha are, which is 4th and 5th. They've certainly got the squad to do it. It's whether they've got the mindset to do it at the minute. And that's what the question is for me at the moment. It's that squad and that team's mindset. And I think that comes from the coach, because he's looked a little lost on the sideline the last couple of times I've seen him. Almost, dare I say it, like Peter Stoger did at times at Cologne and at Dortmund last season, just sat down and didn't really look. He just looked empty. And I've seen that a couple of times of instances of this, even though he's a guy that stands up on the side. Herlick looks like a man who's thinking, oh, what do I do next? And I think if you're a coach, that's not particularly good face to have when you've got TV cameras pointing at you.
Yeah, I think that the fact that Stuttgart have fired their coach and snooping around Hasenhüttl could spring Leverkusen into action as well. I just things I've heard and things that have been talked about, but I wouldn't be surprised, because it's also the comments that Völler made, some pretty snippish comments after the match. I think that it's kind of like a domino falling, right? So maybe keep an eye on that.
Yeah, you have to think that confidence is an issue. You look at Leon Bailey, for instance. Looks like he's shot. Even Julian Brandt today, when he came off the bench, it's just not quite happening on a consistent basis, and really one extreme to the other. We got used to all these end-to-end goal fests, and today we had one shot on target, and that was from Freiburg. So.
And we know they can do better, right? Because we saw it against Larnaca midweek, and even against Dortmund, they played well.
Yeah, the approach today was just bizarre. I can't quite explain it. The intention must have been to keep things tight, but not to keep it to such an extent for the whole game. Maybe start off with that mindset and open up a bit, but it just wasn't happening. But we should mention, Dragovic and Kor play pretty much in the holding midfield positions. Not a whole lot of creativity there. Okay, let's move on. Freiburg, anything else than a relegation fight for you, Manu, this season?
Yeah, sadly, I don't think it's going to be much more. I think every season that Freiburg do not get relegated is a success for them. And you have to remember how small of a budget they have to compare to the rest of the league. So they do fantastic work down in Freiburg. Christian Streich is one of my favorite personalities in this league. So if they survive, I think, and they know this too, then that's been a success.
I think a good season for Freiburg is finishing 15th every season and staying in the Bundesliga. And I think that deep down, I think not their fans will accept that, but I think they will be okay with that because quite rightly, beautiful stadium because of where it's set, but it is really small. It does need a load of investment. I know they're getting a new stadium, but the parameters in which they work on and work within, for Freiburg to finish 15th in a Bundesliga that contains Bayern, Dortmund, Leipzig, Gladbach, Bremen, Leverkusen, Schalke, Wolfsburg, I think that's an excellent result for them.
And keep in mind, only 18 teams, right, in Germany, which makes it so much harder to survive for a smaller club. I think it's a huge success every year. Freiburg in the Bundesliga. It's remarkable what they do.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the teams that might be fighting for relegation start to emerge after 7 matches. Okay, let's move on to one of the other Sunday fixtures and talk about RB Leipzig. They absolutely hammered Nürnberg 6-0. They raced out to a very commanding early lead with Campbell and Poulsen, Sabitzer, Werner all putting the ball into the net for a 4-0 half-time lead, and Nürnberg just going from bad to worse. Although we have to say this could have been a lot worse for them on the score sheet. Chris, your thoughts after this demolition?
Well, it's not looking rosy for Nürnberg, is it? Leaking 7 goals against Dortmund and now 6 against Leipzig. And I didn't see anything from them in the highlights that I saw. So I was covering a Liverpool-Manchester City game, which was on at exactly the same time as this. So I've seen the highlights. And obviously you don't get the true reflection. And we'll watch the full 90 back this week to see exactly how Leipzig played. But from everything I saw, it's the way that they went forward and they just cut through them. I mean, you're looking at after 7 minutes to be 2 goals up, that's your day all day. And likewise for Nürnberg, if you're 2 goals down after 7 minutes, you're instantly thinking, what time is this game over? Especially when you've been whipped 7-0 not too long before that. It could have been more. Timo Werner obviously missed a penalty, and there was a header very close at the end of the game. So I think they were lucky that their 7-0 against Dortmund wasn't bettered by Leipzig. But for Leipzig, wow, what a response from a disappointing maybe couple of weeks for them. I think they've answered themselves and probably answered their biggest critic, which is a coach, Ralf Rangnick. I think they've come out and certainly answered them today. I thought it was really good to see Timo Werner playing at the top of his game. I think I've been a little bit critical of him lately. I don't think he's been taking his chances particularly well. But I think that 4th goal, the way he took it and the way he bent it around, that was a Timo Werner finish from what I saw last season.
Yeah, Nürnberg looked really deflated, and it's really too bad because I saw them against Fortuna Düsseldorf last week, and I actually thought they play really good football, and they just can't get that horsepower on the field. And I think the really sad thing about this, it kind of shows the gap that has opened up between the Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2. The top teams that come up from Bundesliga 2, unless they're one of the big sides like Hamburg and Köln, or the year before Stuttgart and Hannover, the same old kind of clubs, then it's almost impossible for a new club to become established in this league. And Union Berlin, of course, they published a paper suggesting some changes that are quite interesting. And of course, they're bringing in some ideas like a salary cap that will never work. But one thing that they said is the average revenue of a bottom 6 club in the Bundesliga is on average 30 million higher than the 6 top clubs in Bundesliga 2. So how is a club like Nürnberg even supposed to be able to survive in that first year? You basically have to just try to survive that first year and then try to establish yourself, and that's very difficult. And in that match, and I watched the second half in full length, man, those players, those Nürnberg guys, they seemed so deflated. Their heads were hanging so low. Bradlow, the keeper, after the 6th goal was literally in tears. And I think this is...
I'm not surprised he was in tears, because 3 of them were his fault.
Yeah, of course. And but it's just that their quality isn't there, Chris, right? And they don't have the money to sign the quality. And I think there is something to be said about maybe trying to get a little bit more parity in, so that teams from the second Bundesliga can survive. One of the things that Union have suggested is stocking up the 2 divisions to 20 teams. We have the biggest country in Europe, and we have the smallest league of all the top divisions. So, it's food for thought. Nürnberg is the club in Germany with the second most German championships, and yet they can't get a foot in the door in the Bundesliga again. That's very sad.
I think it is sad, but teams like that, if you're back in the Bundesliga for the first time in a long time, I think you've really got to focus on your home games, and that's certainly what they did last week against Düsseldorf. They were excellent. I think not disregard your home games, but if you're going to go away to a top 6, top 7 side, I think you're going to be under the impression that you're going to get beaten. And if you come away with a point, it's a good day. I think the survival in the league comes from your home performances, and if Nürnberg can keep their home games either picking up 3 points, or when bigger teams come, maybe getting a point, I think they will be okay to be around maybe 13th or 14th this season. But if they all of a sudden fall away at home and away, well, then we could be looking at 18th.
It's not looking good, is it? You'd have to think that Hoffenheim, Leverkusen, Schalke will all finish the season above Nuremberg, which leaves them perilously close to the relegation situations. And yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Manu? These 2 teams that came up this year are big clubs, but with your Leipzig and your Hoffenheim, and also we have to remember that we've got Köln and Hamburg and other big clubs in second division. So it's not looking good at all, I don't think, for the 2 promoted clubs this season. I've seen Düsseldorf twice. I haven't seen Nürnberg yet, but I'm hoping to soon enough. Let's give Rangnick a little bit of love then. Manu, he seems to have figured this out. 4 straight wins, pretty comfortable victory in Norway. In the Europa League, looks like he's come along a pretty nice little formula here with contributions coming from all over the pitch.
Yeah, and he's rotating his side as well quite heavily. We've sort of worried about the squad depth, and he seems to have sorted himself out and found a good balance, and he's told some key players to get going. Timo Werner is one of them. Although Augustin I thought looked a little bit like Bambi on ice today. He didn't select the right shoes. He was slipping all over the place. But yeah, he's definitely got the side going. And yeah, Leipzig are second in the league. I don't think we would have said that 3 weeks ago. We even thought about it. But yeah, that 6-0 result means they're second in the league. And yes, it's still early goals, but I think Rangnick has found the right formula. And considering, and I guess we'll talk about Hoffenheim next, but where Hoffenheim are right now, Nagelsmann will be looking at Leipzig and say, I hope he's not leaving me too much of a legacy there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to that game now. The last one we'll talk about it was a 2-1 win to Eintracht on the road in Hoffenheim. Ante Rebic scoring a very nice opener. Luka Jovic making it 2-0. Rebic then getting himself sent off. A really nice goal to Reece Nelson late on for Hoffenheim, but they couldn't quite find an equaliser. Chris, what's your thoughts on this game? And what about Hoffenheim? Do we have much reason for concern with them picking up just 7 points after 7 games?
I think what we could be seeing here is something that we saw last season, especially from Leipzig. It's the Champions League rhythm, which I think is going to really hurt Hoffenheim. They had a very tough game against Manchester City midweek, in which you were there, weren't you, Matt? And they, in all truth and honesty, they were unlucky to lose that game, but it'll have taken a lot out of them. And today, all of a sudden, they're playing at home against a strong side, Frankfurt, who are playing in the Europa League, who have played exceptionally well in the Europa League and played well last week. They've come into Hoffenheim this week and taken all 3 points. And my only worry for Nagelsmann and Hoffenheim is this Champions League rhythm. I think it was a problem for Leipzig last season. It was certainly a problem for Dortmund when they had their problems. It's this constant it's this constant Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday rhythm. And it's not playing, no disrespect to Eintracht Frankfurt or the sides that they played in Europe, But when you're playing teams like Shakhtar Donetsk, Lyon, Manchester City, of the caliber they are, and then you've got to go back into your league game and play a good side in Eintracht Frankfurt, something's got to give. And I think for the sides that are in Europe, that aren't used to playing in Europe, especially at this high level in a Champions League, I think it can take quite a bit of adaptation. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Hoffenheim join that club of teams or that group of teams who don't do particularly well after they played in Europe.
Yeah.
Manu, how much of the concern is this for you with Hoffenheim's last 3 results, all defeats?
Yeah, we saw something similar to them last year, and then they really turned it on in the second half. But I'm with Chris. This is going to be a very tough run, and I'm glad you said a good team like Frankfurt, because boy, have they turned it on. That 4-1 followed with last week against Hannover, followed by a 4-1 victory against Lazio. That Lazio are a good side, and yes, they were down 2-man, but you had to get them into that situation first, and then beating Hoffenheim 2-1. Yeah, that's a really remarkable run of results, and I think that Frankfurt, the things are really coming together, and Hütter's style is slowly showing through. So I'm really impressed by them, and impressed by them to get that result against Hoffenheim. And I think with Hoffenheim, we're really only going to see the real Hoffenheim when they have either dropped down to Europa League or completely dropped out of Europe.
Yeah, what about you, Chris? Manu and I have been very impressed with Frankfurt. What have you made of them, and how impressed have you been with these last 3 results, scoring a lot of goals?
Yeah, I've been particularly impressed with them, especially midweek in the European game. I covered that game. I thought they were excellent. I think they've now looked to be clicking under the head coach, and I've really got a lot of time for them. And it's just the brand and the style of football they played. I mean, midweek, it was exceptional. The intensity they played, they blew an Italian team out of the water. And that's what we like to see. And yes, they went and had a fantastic game against Hanover, but this particular game, I thought they showed a lot of patience. I thought they were very clever in their game management, which is another sign that a team are growing. And yeah, I've got a lot of time for them. I will be interested to see where they finish come the end of the season, because when you play in Europe, you go one or two ways. You either adapt to it very well, or you do a little bit like what Hoffenheim have done and what Leipzig did last season. So Frankfurt look like they could be adapting to this Sunday, Thursday rhythm. And obviously under Adi Hütter, he's got them playing very well. I think their shape adds to it. I think the 3-5-2 that they play, and that's a flat one with a flat midfield, I think that suits them exceptionally well. Yeah. And I think they work really hard out of possession, and especially they did in the midweek game. But they've got some players who they can rely on, like Rebic and Luka Jovic, who I think, if we're going to look at top 2 strikers as a pairing, I think Frankfurt may have the best pairing up front at the moment, and that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Spoke today about teams who are glad an international break coming. I think Eintracht Frankfurt are one side who will be disappointed that this 2-week break's coming, because they seem to be in a fantastic vein of form, and when you're in that vein of form, the last thing you want is not to play for 2 weeks. Yeah,
and they're playing the Limassol, the Cypriotic side, 2 times in a row now in Europe. And if they win those 2 games, they're through. They can wrap up their group in 4 games.
And that's exactly what they need.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it is, because of the gap they've not been in. And this is a team that's not just adapting to the Europa League, it's adapting to being back in Europe after, so many years. I think that Pokal victory that we witnessed in May, I think has propelled them into this season. And I think they've taken a lot of heart from that. And okay, we had the early disappointment against Bayern, where they were whipped in the Super Cup, but at the end of the day, it's a friendly match. It doesn't matter. This is where it matters now. And come the business part of the season, Eintracht Frankfurt look like they're on fire and kicking into full gear. I wouldn't be expected. I wouldn't think that they're going to be where they are for long. Where are they? 7th? If they can continue this form, they should be knocking on the door of a Champions League qualification spot. It's whether they can keep the intensity up until the end of the season, but it's certainly looking good for their money at the minute.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. I mean, individually, you mentioned Jovic and Rebic. We haven't even talked about Haller yet. I can see them go a long way.
Yeah, Haller is sensational. Every time you watch him, he's just got class. Rebic is improving phenomenally. And I think even Luka Jovic might be underrated still. I'm hugely impressed with him, but I think he still flies under the radar despite having all the skills and showing it on a regular basis here. But yeah, plenty to be happy about with Eintracht Frankfurt. A little bit to worry about with Hoffenheim. Okay, let's wrap this up then and just tell everyone what's happening. Manu, you've had your nice little holiday out here, drinking beer and watching football. Is it back to real life soon enough?
Yeah, actually, I'm taking a real holiday next week because it's Nations League. There's not much going on. We'll have the Germany preview and Ukraine-Russia previews for the UEFA Nations League and some other ones. But I'm spending a week in Paris with my wife, and then I'm heading back to real life in Canada for at least a couple months before I'm coming back out here. So yeah, I guess everyone enjoyed the UEFA Nations League break. It couldn't come at a worse time.
Exactly. It's a time to let out a huge sigh of relief. Chris, what are you getting up to in the next couple of weeks of relative peace and quiet?
Well, I'm going to be lost without club football.
Yeah.
I always am lost without club football, mainly because that's all I write on. So I don't know. My garden probably could do with a bit of tending before the winter kicks in. No, I'm just I'm going to say take it easy because once this international break's finished, I've got Champions League and Bundesliga games to be flying to. So yeah, it's going to get busy for me. So I'm going to enjoy the next couple of weeks with my feet up.
Fantastic stuff. Well, I'm going to be tuned into the Portugal under-21 side. They've got a couple of really important games coming up to see whether they can qualify for the European Championships in Italy in the summer. So I'll be tuned into that. And yeah, trying to catch up on all the odds and ends that are building up with so much non-stop football action, especially with this Champions League and Europa League stuff. Just awesome football, but yeah, it can get a bit challenging trying to keep up with it all. We hope you enjoyed the Gegenpressing Podcast for this week. Have a great couple of weeks. Auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, dich abzuholen.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.